Okay. Consideration to approve the memorandum of understanding between the County of Lake and the Lake County Continuum of Care to alleviate and prevent homelessness in Lake County and approve budget of HAP-6. Application to the California Department of Housing and Community Services, Behavioral Health Services. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a couple of individuals coming. Are they presenting, Mr.
Yes.
Abbott? Yes, they will be presenting, so if you could just hold for one moment. Are they there? Oh, Pastor Shannon. Pastor Shannon will be joining us.
Thank you. I'm here.
Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Scott Abbott with the Lake County Behavioral Health Services, which is also the administrative entity for the Lake County Continuum of Care.
Can you get a little closer to the microphone?
Okay. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the COC, and I have three compadres here to join us and help talk about that. What we plan to do today is first talk about our annual point in time count. Pastor Shannon will be providing that with a nice show that she has. She'll be sharing her screen, I believe. And we will also be talking about the homeless, the HHAP round 6, which is the, now it's sort of spacing what HHAP stands for.
Homeless Housing Assistance.
Homeless Housing Assistance Prevention. Thank you.
Had to look at it.
I know. I look over to you. Bruno is our chair of the COC. And so we will be talking about a little bit about HHAP 6. It is required that we present HHAP, get your approval for the application. A strong component of that also is the homeless action plan, which is required. Requires 3 public presentations. We've done 2 through the COC. We saved the 3rd one to do it here. But before we get to that, I'd like to have Pastor Shannon to discuss our point in time count.
Great. Thank you so much. Melissa will actually be sharing her screen, but I will walk us through this year's PIT count. First of all, for those that don't know, the PIT count, point in time count, happens once a year across the entire country. And the idea is not to capture the entire photo of homelessness, but one glance of how it's being experienced at one point in time. It happens in the winter because the federal government asks us to do this PIT count on the last week of January so that we don't get campers and folks that really have other choices, but who are truly forced to be out on the streets in inclement weather. Our PIT count generally takes place on the 4th Thursday of the month, as it did this year, January 23rd. And the PIT count takes a lot of time and effort. We had 76 volunteers who conducted 311 interviews. There were an additional 28 observations. That means that rather than interviewing the person for the PIT count to ask their questions about their experience of homelessness, they were simply observed and counted. Some communities do observation-only PIT counts, and they're not able to collect the depth of data that we have, but we make a concerted effort to really tell the story of what homelessness looks like in Lake County for our residents experiencing homelessness. So we're always really happy when we're able to tell that story a little bit more broadly. Go ahead and forward. The slide, please, Melissa. the pit count isn't a perfect picture of homelessness because it's a very narrow definition of homeless. And so, for example, if you look at the records of Partnership Health Plan in a year where the pit count listed 500 people experiencing homelessness, they had over 3,000. Part of the reason is because ours is specifically on one night, whereas theirs is accrued throughout the entire year. Another reason why ours is going to look like a smaller count than some other definitions of homelessness, because we don't count couch surfing, we don't count when there are multiple families living in a dwelling that is meant for a single family. McKinney-Vento is a measure of homelessness for the schools, for example, and they can count multiple families living in a single dwelling. For the purpose of the federal pit count, we can only use those not living in a habitation, in a unit meant for habitation, or literally living on the street. So having given that, let's move on. I'll share with you that our count is consistent with the state as a whole. And what I mean by that is that the trajectories and the numbers that we are seeing are consistent with what the state of California is seeing as a whole. So in 2024, homelessness increased nationally by over 13%, but California, through all of the new programs that we have been doing, had an increase of only 3%. So we saw a much lower rate of increase in homelessness than almost the entire country. We did better than 40 states. Florida, Texas, New York, Illinois all saw significantly larger percentage, both in the number of people experiencing homelessness as well as in the percentage of their population experiencing homelessness. California also has received the largest reduction in veteran homelessness in the United States, and we've made some meaningful progress in reducing youth homelessness. Again, our numbers show that as well, and we're going to dig into those a little bit more shortly. Go ahead to the next slide, please, Melissa. At a glance, as a whole, this is what we have seen. So these are just tracking for the last 5 years. I don't know if you're able to see my mouse. No, you probably can't because I'm not sharing my screen. But if you look at that third column where it says unsheltered homeless, that's what people tend to think of homelessness. Thank you, Melissa. People tend to think of that as that is the people that are actually on the street. That's what you see when you're walking in the parks and when you see people that are trying to find shelter behind building. The sheltered count, which you'll see is much smaller, that's the programs that we have. That is Hope Center. That's Hamilton Haven. That's the places where we are using homelessness intervention dollars specifically to provide shelter, but they still meet a definition of homelessness. And so when we combine both those people who are in our programs to provide shelter for those experiencing homelessness and those who are truly unhoused, that is what gets to our total number of 362. That's down quite a bit from last year, but again, in the entire state of California, those numbers were down. Some people want to rush to we just missed people and we didn't count them. But I would like to say that some of the homeless interventions that we've been enacting are in fact helping and making a difference. And then we also had an area of the pit count last year where I think the data wasn't completely accurate, and we did a really good job this year of double checking all of our data, not only in terms of the surveys that were done. You'll notice that we have quite a fewer number of observations, right? This year we had 28, last year was 126. So that is a person going into a neighborhood saying, we think all these people are unhoused and experiencing homelessness, but they were actually not necessarily meeting the full definition of HUD's homelessness, which is one of the reasons that we really make every effort to do interviews instead of observations. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So this is a look overall where we count people who are experiencing homelessness by zip code. So it's not a surprise that the largest population base in the county, with Clear Lake with a population of 17,000, has the largest number of people experiencing homelessness, although I want to point out it's not the largest percentage per capita. So we did survey in that first column, you see 126 people, but out of a population of 17,000, that's 0.7% per thousand. So you can just kind of get an overview. This means, so take a look also at those zeros. We didn't count anybody in Clear Lake Park, nobody in Cobb, nobody in Findlay, nobody in Glen Haven. And those numbers are traditionally low for us in any event. Lakeport, which specifically, because we have Hamilton Haven, it's worth calling out. You see that 0.71, which is similar to what we see in Clear Lake. But again, that includes not only those people who are experiencing homelessness on the street, but also those who are sheltered homeless. So I think it's worth taking a look at those numbers. Next slide, please.
If I may interrupt real quick, Pastor Shannon, those
Sure.
previous numbers, take it with a certain grain of salt. As you can see, when we looked up each zip code, it does only add up to 62,000. It's the best information that we have, and it's just a good idea to give us a glimpse as to how each individual community is being impacted by this.
Can I address something really quick too?
Sure.
The previous page, you had the sheltered at 66 and the unsheltered at 245. And are those the total numbers of the homeless?
For
Because
the
we had
purpose of the-
362, I thought you had mentioned the 245 plus the 66, but you have 362 instead of 311.
That's because you also have to add the observations.
Okay.
Right. So the 362 is including all of the people, whether we did an interview, whether we did an observation, sheltered, unsheltered, it includes all of those categories.
But that
And-
still only comes to 339.
We'll review that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's okay. I just wanted
I
to
saw
bring
that
that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, next slide. All right. So one of the things that we were asked to look at in particular this year is how we partner with sovereign nations within Lake County to identify how they are experiencing homelessness. And so the numbers that you have here are showing that 45 people answered in the surveys that they are either American Indian or Alaskan Native. Among those, only 17 identified that they're a member of a Lake County tribe. And the reason that we specifically want to call that out is because the tribes, like the rest of Lake, like the county of Lake, the tribes have also done a phenomenal job of trying to end homelessness within their community. So even though there are 45 people who say that they are Native American or Alaskan Indian, only 17 are those things as a member of a Lake County tribe. Big Valley was able to count 12. They counted their members on their tribal lands themselves. This is not us going onto their lands and counting for them, but partnering with them to receive their count. Elam had 2, that's significantly less than last year. Scotts Valley, and again, I think that was an issue of observation. All of those observations last year, a majority of them were at Elam. Scotts Valley had 1, Robinson had 2. Notice that there are absolutely 0 counted for Middletown or Habomatalel. I talked to Moak and I asked him, just at a gut level, do you believe that that is true, that there are 0 people in the Middletown Pomo Rancheria area that are tribal members that are experiencing homelessness? And he said, yeah, I believe that that is true because they have done such an amazing work in terms of getting them housed. So that is true for both Middletown and Habomatalel. Okay.
I
go to the
can't
next
let
slide.
you keep going past that picture without at least mentioning something. The COC endured a huge loss. The lady in the middle is Holly Hanna. Unfortunately, she passed recently, and she was not only critical in our pit count. She was situated in Upper Lake, but also she worked for LCOE and was a great contact for trying to figure out what families and youth are experiencing homelessness. We're trying to refill that gap, but she was absolutely amazing at what she did, and I just can't allow that picture to move on without at least mentioning her and the work that she provided for the COC. Huge loss.
Yeah, thank you for that.
One thing I'll add too is I know the numbers that display that, but I also understand that that you all don't count couch surfing.
Yeah.
Because I know
We are
that number is way higher, but if you don't count couch surfing, that's why the number is what it is, because people will just stay with other folks.
Yeah, so for the purposes of the pit count, we're not allowed to count people who are couch surfing. However, those couch surfing numbers are captured in two other ways. The McKinney-Vento data captures those who are couch surfing that have children and school-age children, and then also in the HMIS system, if they're couch surfing and they register to receive services for people who are unhoused, they will be captured that way as well, which is one of the reasons that we crosswalk the data between those different systems.
All right, thanks.
Okay, next. So here's one of the breakouts I wanted to show in terms of race and ethnicity. So the largest population of people experiencing homelessness in Lake County is Caucasian or white. It is also the largest, population of the county. So, and then again, to point out that the second largest group experiencing homelessness in Lake County are those who identified as American Indian or Alaskan Native, 45. But of that 45, only 17 identified as being a member of the tribe. Next slide, please. This shows you overall as an example of what the percentages look like in Lake County. So you see this 45 out of 366 is 12%. So it looks like 12% of our population experiencing homelessness are Native American when they represent only 2% of the population as a whole, which is a warning to us. Like, this is a population that we need to look at. We need to pay attention. Why does one group of people have a higher incidence of population per percentage of their group within the county? And so it's just one other way of looking to track that data. So even if we're not looking at all Native Americans, for example, 12% experience that are unhoused, even if we're only looking at those who have a tribal affiliation at 4.5%, they only make up 2% of the community, which means they have a higher rate of homelessness. So that's the purpose of this slide, to show you those things. Next, please.
A lot of times they're unaffiliated with the tribe, and so they don't have direct services to the federally recognized tribe. So that's what happens.
Right. And or they are affiliated, they're just not affiliated with a local tribe, right? There are people who, when we ask them the questions more in depth, they'll say that they are members of other tribes that are not physically located in Lake County, but that is their affiliation. Right. So all of those things play into that. This year, we did make an intentional effort not only to count our veterans that are unhoused, but to partner with the veteran social service supports that already exist in the county. And so this is, and so they added, for the first year ever, Frick Hall as a site for the pit count, where people could go and be interviewed by other veterans rather than random volunteers that are outgoing if they chose to do that. So this year we had 5 veterans in the sheltered survey. So that's 5 veterans who are in a housing program such as Hope Central or Hamilton Haven. We had 12 veterans that were unsheltered. So that means that in that sense, they're living on the street. So both of those numbers were improved for us in Lake County, right? Last year we had 5 that were in shelter, or 6 in shelters. This year, only 5. Last year we had 14 veterans we interviewed that are unhoused. This year we had only 12. So the phrase that you hear sometimes is functional zero. And when we see specific populations going down, that means that we're at functional zero. Functional zero doesn't mean we have 0 veterans that are unhoused in our community. We have 17, according to the pit count. Functional zero reports to the growth, not the number of people. So we are going the right direction in terms of our veteran services and veteran housing. Next slide. So this, I don't particularly think this data gives us a huge amount of information in terms of our programs, except to say that as expected, and again, consistent with the state of California, we have a lower population of women that are unhoused than we do men. Typically, that's because it is easier for women to get friends to house them. In general, when we interview folks, that's sort of the theme that we hear. Again, consistent with the state of California, our highest population experiencing homelessness is between that 25 and 64 age group. We're always particularly worried about that higher end, the 26 folks that you see in the 65 plus group. That says to us that we really need to be looking at some kind of intervention that is specifically targeted for people that are senior citizens. And these specific numbers, when we have the ages, they are based on the interviews, not the observations. And the interviews are really where we get our most relevant data, because it tells us more to what their experience is rather than us guessing what we think their experience is. The next slide looks at mental health data, which I'm sure you'll be interested in based on the previous agenda item today. 82 of the adults that were interviewed said self-identified as having a serious mental illness. When it was framed as a question around mental illness, 57 identified that they have a significant substance abuse disorder. 5 said that they had AIDS. 37 said that they were adult survivors of domestic violence. Now, take a look, contrast those numbers up top with the numbers that you see below. So 82 versus 119. What is the difference between those? The 82 is those who self-identified as having a serious mental illness, but that 119 is contrasting that same population with people that are registered for services within HMIS, and we know that it's higher. So we have 119 of the folks that were interviewed that did not identify as having mental illness, but are receiving services. So that's not too much of a disparity when you consider that a stranger is interviewing them asking, do you have a mental illness? 82 said yes, but 119 are actually receiving services. Same thing in terms of the substance use disorder, although you'll notice that that's much closer. 57 during the interview said that they have a substance use disorder, and we show that of those that were interviewed in the PIT count, of those interviewed in the PIT count also registered to receive services in HMIS. It's a fairly close number, 57 to 68. How many folks have HIV/AIDS? 5 said they did during the interview. 9 in HMIS are receiving services. And then the domestic violence number, and this is intriguing to me, is exact. 37 both in the PIT count and in our HMIS data.
And just want to add real quick, HMIS is the Homeless Management Information System that is utilized by all of the agencies that are partners with the COC, and that includes our Lake County Department, Social Services and Behavioral Health, so that we can identify those that require the services and we can go ahead and refer them as best as possible.
Great, thank you for that, Bruno. Go ahead to the next slide. In 2018, we made a change in how we did the PIT count. And in 2019, as a result of that, we were lifted up. We, Lake County, were lifted up as a community of best practice in terms of the PIT count. And the change that we made in specific was that every year we go to the trouble of having all of these volunteers go out and do these interviews. So we decided that we would start asking questions that are unique to Lake County. So we'll gather all the data that the federal government requires of us, but we're also going to include questions that are unique to the population, that are residents here, that are our neighbors. Now, we did have one technical glitch in that this year, in that the unique to Lake County questions did not populate in the sheltered survey. So this is not the full 362, it's the 242 who are unhoused, not in a shelter program like Hope Center or Hamilton Haven. So this only refers to those 242. Obviously it doesn't reflect those who were in the observations because we didn't interview them. We just saw them. So that is one thing. And then the second thing that we learned through the unique questions was that the sheltered survey did not include tribal sheltering programs. So Big Valley, for example, has homeless service housing where they're able to help place people experiencing homelessness into housing, but that wasn't an option on the survey. So we will get better about doing that. But I just want to do those two observations before I go into the Lake County specific data. So here we go. First of all, I want to say, and I say this every time because every single survey we have ever done has shown this, Lake County is home. Of the 242 unsheltered surveys, only 8 people declined to answer how long have you lived in Lake County, but for all of those that did answer that question, the total number of years is 4,928, which means that the average time that a person who is living unsheltered, unhoused in Lake County, the average time that they have lived in Lake County is over 18 years. And of those, 143 of them have family that are living in Lake County as well. So when we talk about homelessness in Lake County, we need to also talk about the fact that it is home. So they're not homeless, they're unhoused. They are in the place, for many of them, where they've lived for decades, but where they no longer have shelter. Okay, thank you. Next slide. And then because, since 2015, we know, depending on the survey that you're looking at, somewhere between 60 and 67% of our land mass has burned, we wanted to ask questions about how many people are unhoused due to fire-related situations. No surprise that, there were 11 people that identified Boyles or Glenhaven, but take a look at the second to bottom. That is the 2015 Valley Fire 10 years ago, within the past week, 10 years ago, and we still have 12 people in the survey that are saying that their homelessness was caused by the Valley Fire. Now, I want to acknowledge that this does not mean that their house burned down in the Valley Fire. They might have been living off the grid, in a shed, in an accessory dwelling unit, in somebody's garage. There are many different ways, or it may even be that a landlord, took over their house because their house burned down and they then displaced renters. So there are many different ways that you can sort of get to this place of saying that the fire caused your homelessness. Maybe they lost a job in the fire. But the point that I want to make is that 45 out of the 242 surveys, so almost 20% of people experiencing homelessness in Lake County, identify that one of these major fires in Lake County was what initially caused their situation of being unhoused. So that is, to me, staggering when we think about what that means and how we respond, and also the trauma-informed care that we need to bring to the programs and the people that we serve. All right, next question is all about youth. So we want, as we looked at what questions we really wanted to ask and to dig deeper into, is what does our youth population that's unhoused, what are the things that contribute to that? So one of the questions that we asked was if somebody was ever in foster care or were considered an ICWA student. 43% said yes. So again, that's almost 20%, not quite. Do you believe that you're experiencing homelessness due to aging out of the foster care system? 7 said that the direct reason for their being unhoused right now was because they aged out of foster care. Of those who said that they were homeless, we asked if they had an experience of homelessness as a youth. 20 of those said yes, they did. And then finally, we said, do you believe your living situation as a youth contributed to your current situation? 20 said yes. So those bottom two are different ways of asking the same question. So again, it makes sense that the numbers are the same, and it just affirms the validity of the data as we're collecting it when we ask one question in two different ways and we get the same number of answers. Next, we looked at incarceration and the legal system. And we really wrestled with how to ask this question. If you ask somebody directly, like, are you a felon? Is this the reason you're homeless? You created defensiveness and less openness to answering the questions. And we didn't really want to know how many people are felons. What we really wanted to know is how many people had an interaction with the justice system, or someone in their family had an interaction with the justice system that is the cause of their experience of being unhoused, either themselves or a family member. And so 37 people said that was the direct reason for their being unhoused right now. So that's good because, of course, we know that probation has a program that they are working on and receive funding for to build housing to include people who are justice involved. So that next year, hopefully, we'll see that number specifically go down. But this is how we track how well the grants and the funding that we're doing impact the measures that we actually see on the streets. So the next thing that we asked, it was the first time that we specifically asked this question, and it gives us some really good data. Instead of saying, what kind of housing do we need? Instead of making a very broad question, we ask people to consider very personally, for you yourself, for you or your family, what kind of housing would you prefer if it was available today? Now, only 233 people answered this question, but here's some things that I really want to point out. And I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. The largest number of requests was for an apartment, right? They would like to be in an apartment. And that's common. We would expect to see that in a survey of this sort. It's consistent with other national questions. 59 said they would like to be in a house, 57 in a tiny home. Again, that's pretty consistent with what we see in other communities. But these other two numbers are what I really wanted to show you. 26 of them said specifically that they would like to have safe parking. Now, this doesn't mean somebody is choosing to want to be homeless forever. It means that they just want a place to be short term so they can figure out what they are doing. And when we look at communities that provide safe parking and we provide wraparound services in conjunction with that safe parking, we see that good results, better than 50%, which is a kind of the mark of what you want to see in a program, are able to find housing. So next year, it will be very interesting to see what the numbers come from the safe parking projects that Lake County is opening. Now, I want you to remember this three over the next 3 slides. So this question was, if we just asked people what kind of housing they want for themselves, only 3 people said group or communal housing. However, next slide, that 3 changed to a 98 if we said it was a dorm. So would you consider living in a dorm if all the residents were part of a job training? It went from 3 people willing to live or wanting to live in a group setting to 98 people wanting to live in a group setting. When we added specific training programs or workforce development, that 3 went from 3 to 98 to 143. That is more than a third of the people that completed this interview. And so we took a look at what kinds of group housing specifically connected with job training or education were the most sought after for people. And you'll see that while housing for education, I mean, we know that students want dorms. That was the second highest that we would expect to see. But the highest number was actually construction. So if we would be able to find a way to connect a shelter a shelter provider with a workforce development program, specifically in the area of construction, that was the highest, most sought after place where people said that they would like to live in group housing. And then, of course, second, as I already talked about, education dorms. But then also take a look at the landscaping. You know, it's also a significant number, not as high as the construction was. But if you combine these others, landscaping, seasonal ag, solar, construction, you get a pretty significant number of people that want to better their lives by training or education. The advantage of joining a shelter program with workforce development is they not only get the tools that they need in terms of the shelter, but they get the tools they need to then go on to independent shelter and affordable jobs. So that was the first time we've actually connected this data in those ways. This next question is also the first time that we asked it because we go into grant writing often in terms of homeless prevention programs, assuming that they cannot pay anything. But that's actually not the case. When we asked people, not in general, but for you and your family, what price range could you reasonably afford to pay for housing? 10 of them said they could pay $800 or more. 20 said they could pay between $600 and $800. 38 said that they could pay between $400 and $600. 28 said between $200 and $400. 45 were like, it'd have to be under $200. 95 said it would have to be free. So when you look at this, it can also give us an idea that having fee-based shelter could be a good way for us to have sustainable programs for people who are currently unhoused. And again, this is the first time that we've ever asked these questions, so it will be interesting to track how this changes at the next pit count, which hard to believe, but is only 4 months away. Okay, next slide. This is the one that everybody really wants to know. They're like, how many people would you say are unhoused in terms of the pit? And at the end of the day, the number is 362. Now, is that a perfect number? No. Is it accurate? Probably not, because this is just an observation and interviews on 1 day at a time, you know, and you can miss anybody on 1 day of time. And by the way, people that are unhoused do a really good job of hiding. That's how they survive. It's a good survival tactic. So, but this is the number that we're working with for this year. I think that it's fairly consistent with the overall trends that we see in the state of California. And it will be really interesting to take some of these unique questions that we started this year for the first time and see how they change next year. So that is our overall report. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pastor Shannon, for providing that presentation. I want to add a couple of things. Number one, Melissa, let's make sure and check 362 if it's supposed to be 339 or 362. We do have a town hall on a discussion on homelessness coming up on Wednesday, September 24th at 5:30 p.m. at Soparis. We will be providing some of that information as well as a whole lot more to really broaden the scope of the discussion about what we've been doing and what we plan on doing, and also to hear from the public in general. I want to talk about a issue that we had in doing the pit count. We had a rough conversation about probation, a very real conversation about probation participating in the pit count. There were some that felt that it was inappropriate, and there was others who felt it was absolutely appropriate. Probation did take part in the pit count. I tried to be very firm that I think that probation does a fabulous job in the work that they do, and that they have changed their philosophy and how they approach things, and that they are absolutely a key partner to the work that we do, especially seeing the numbers of folks that have dealt with incarceration in the past. And we know that about 30% of those that are on probation currently are dealing with homelessness as well. an interesting scenario happened. I don't remember if it was Nice or Upper Lake. I think it was in Nice, where probation was matched up with a lived experience individual who was at Hope Center at the time. His name is Robert Sexton. Sorry, Robert, I didn't tell you that I was going to talk about you today. And he was currently at that point in time on probation. They worked fantastically together. They did a great job up in Nice in being able to find the encampments and talk to people and do the interviews. It was awkward at first, but it ended up in a relationship building type of exercise that would not have occurred in any other way. And I think that's why we want probation to be a part of it. It's about building relationships. It's not about separate boxes and authority versus not authority. It's about working together and collaborating. In fact, Robert has graduated from his Hope Center situation and then now lives in a home and is moving forward and is going to school at Woodland Community College. But I just want to talk about that there have been some difficult conversations regarding how to do the pit count. I think it's mostly we think that we did what was the right thing to do. Probation is an absolutely great partner and needs to continue to participate as they have in the past and will continue in the future. And just my last comment, couple thank yous. Pastor Shannon, I know I twisted your arm. We lost our pit count chair from the Continuum of Care. I asked her if she would be able to take that over, and she said yes, and did a bang-up job of organizing and putting together the pit count. And my last comment is I can't say thank you without also thanking the behavioral health staff that really does all the work in the background, and that's Melissa Kopf and Scott Abbott. There may be others. I know Megan is always involved as well. There may be others behind the scene that I'm not fully aware, but I just want to say thank you to that because there's a lot of background work that does occur for the COC. The COC does provide some funding to help pay for some of these positions, but I'm also certain that that's not entirely the total cost. So thank you.
All right. I will open it up for the public. If there's anyone in the public that would like to make a comment on this item on the agenda.
I do have a few more things to talk about. HHAPs.
1 second, I'll close the public input and bring it back, and if I have to open it again, I will. Go ahead, Scott.
Sorry. The reason we had the pit count to discuss it with you is to kind of give you the overview of the state of homelessness in Lake County. It's as Supervisor Spate was talking about, it's an incredible endeavor of doing a pit count, and I think we do, seems like better every year, learn something every year that we, make improvements for the next year. But I think, even more important, it really brings out the importance of an organization like the Continuum of Care to address homelessness. These are, real people. They're not, although we have some numbers, these are real people with real stories and real tragedies and our most vulnerable folks of Lake County. And so I'm super glad and proud that this community recognizes that, this board recognizes that, and wants to, continue to try and solve homelessness in our county. An organization like the COC, I don't want to talk a lot about it. There is a nice article in the Record B today about the Continuum of Care, if you want to find out more information. But just real quickly, what it does do, one of the main things besides the pit count is obtaining grants, state grants, federal grants, and then taking that funding and based on things like the pit count and feedback that we receive from the community is determine what are the best uses and best needs that we can do with the funding that we have. One of the funding opportunities that we have before us is HHAP Round 6, which is a state grant that comes out almost every year, and which provides COCs across and counties across the state some funding that the state, because they're also invested in addressing homelessness, and but they also, are each year add a little more requirements and to those grants. I've asked Linda Hedstrom if she could talk a little bit about, she's our grant writer, talk about the requirements of HHAP 6 and the input that we need from you and the community. Linda, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Don't know if you could see me.
Yes, we can.
The HHAP 6 application was due end of August. So, folks, that's been submitted. But typically within 30 days, State Department of Housing says, comes back to us asking for a lot of changes sometimes, depending on whatever the governor at the time is trying to emphasize as far as homelessness efforts in the state. And so what we expect to be hearing back from HCD anytime now, and that will be the time to submit any of your Board of Supervisors comments in particular. One item that is required as part of the annual HHAP application is a regionally coordinated homelessness action plan. And that was attached with your board agenda. It discusses all what Pastor Shannon basically explained about the different kinds of homelessness definitions, pit count versus, the couch surfers and people in other units that are unsafe for habitation, but are still being used as homeless or housing in Lake County, for example. And so that plan does go into detail on all that. It does also discuss in some detail last year's pit count. We didn't have this year's complete pit count up and running and accepted by HUD just at the time this was due. So when we next update this homelessness action plan, this current pit count information, which is very detailed, I'm just super impressed, will be included. Also, hopefully, we'll be discussing what the county is and the COC is doing with its new cleanup program of the different encampments, which is terribly ambitious for a large rural place like Lake County. Just terribly impressed that the COC went after that. But if you have any comments on that homelessness action plan, I'd sure appreciate it, because one of the regulations now, fairly new with the state, is that both the county and the COC need to annually review and update that plan. And if I can say that you reviewed and we considered any update suggestions you have now or care to submit, and could be then incorporated for when HCD comes back to us in the very near future, asking for, whatever we changed, we could have that on the public record. Also, as part of today's meeting, we need the Board of Supervisors to say that it again formally agrees to participate with the COC in ending homelessness in Lake County, and you've got that MOU as part of your agenda packet. Any questions?
It looks like we don't. Thank you for that. It looks like, Shannon, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Not a question, but I remembered what the issue of the 362 is. The number is 362, but The interviews represent households. So just because one person is interviewed doesn't mean they count as one person. They might count as three because we only interview one person per household. So the total number of people is 362, but the interviews represent households. So for example, we wouldn't interview a child. They would be counted with a parent.
Thank you for that.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Just, again, sharing appreciation. I know that Linda works hard for the COC as far as all of our grant applications. Nothing that we do would be possible without the grant funding that we receive. So always appreciate your help in getting us the funding we need.
All right.
Thank you.
There's not anything else. I think we are at a, Lloyd? Good?
There's just on the memo, there is a recommended action for you.
Yeah, MOU. Is that what it is? Ready for action?
If there's nothing further, I'll move to approve the memorandum of understanding between the County of Lake and the Lake County Continuum of Care to alleviate and prevent homelessness in Lake County, and authorize the chair to sign. And then should we take that in a separate action?
Yes, and that would be probably two separate actions.
So I have a motion and a second, and just real quick, I'm going to comment because people are watching. I will follow up with you all about some of the things I'm dealing with in the mobile home parks because I know that that's a prevention type of thing. I just don't want to get into that. I know that's going to take away from what we're talking about now, so I'll follow up. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
And with that, I'll continue. I'll move to approve budget of HHAP-6 application to the California Department of Housing and Community Services.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Supervisor Sabatier?
I know you didn't want to distract, but I just want to say out loud for the public as well as the board, we did set aside $400,000 for prevention. That is in the works. There's money set aside within the budget here as well. And so we are looking to really work on one end, which is to get people off the streets, and on the other end, to prohibit them from falling into the trap of homelessness.
Thank you
So,
for that. No, I appreciate that.
We are attempting both, and hopefully we can help you with what's available.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for that. And I don't know I think that's all we have for you all, right?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right.